That's right.
What exactly is gut health?
Well, as you can imagine, a lot of people out there are suffering these days, and it starts with the basics: bloating, burping, belching, wind, flatulence, diarrhea, constipation. It's that sort of stuff that give people the hint that something might be going wrong in the gut.
That's my normal Saturday morning.
Yeah, big Friday night. So what ends up happening is that the longer this goes on, it can affect lots of other things in the body. So in the gut, 90% of immune system is there. So people who come down with constant colds, infections, people who go into autoimmune disease. At last count, there were 112 different autoimmune diseases. Once we end up with one, we're more likely to develop more autoimmune system diseases where the immune system's attacking different tissues in the body depending on our weakness or our genetics or our DNA, what we've done.
There's been lots of, I suppose, commercial type products over the years, like your cult yogurt they promote the probiotic gut health and all that sort of stuff.
Yes.
Is that similar? Does that sort of aim at the same sort of thing as what you're talking about?
That works on the microbiota. So the microbiota are the gut bugs. Mm-hmm. So the Yakults and inner healths and those sort of things that have been available forever, they work on very specific probiotics, so different strains in the gut. Different strains do different things. There's sort of now up to about 6,000 types that they know about, and different strains of probiotics have different functions. Mm-hmm. So, for example, everyone's heard of, say, acidophilus and bifidus. They're two of the most common ones, and they're the ones that are in things like those commonly bought products. When people buy things that are on the shelf, just by the way, so people often say, I don't want anything, I have to get out of the fridge. It's a different strain. It's not going to do for you what the ones that stay in the fridge do. So people will automatically go to the ones in the on the shelf if they want to go, say, overseas. But it's not going to be the type that actually boost the immunity or that help with IBS or that have other specific roles, because that's not what that bug does.
Right.
It's on the shelf because it doesn't need a refrigerator. So the ones that need the refrigerator, they need the refrigerator. So basically the gut health, there's 6 layers to the gut. So you've got your microbiota, you've got your little villi in the intestines. Mm-hmm. What we're talking about is when the villi start to die, they start to erode, get degraded because of either bad bacteria or food intolerance or allergies, or sometimes medications, things like alcohol, sugar, too many grains, the sort of things that quite often we have a bit of an understanding that they're causing some inflammation in the gut, but we don't know where it's going in our long-term health. Mm-hmm. And some people don't care, and that's fine too. Yeah. I sort of totally get that some people go, no, this is my life. I'm having toast and tea 3 times a day, and that's my thing. Mm. So I'm not obviously talking to people who are very happy with their gut health, even if they have the issues. Mm. So what ends up happening? There's this thing called leaky gut. Have you heard of leaky gut before?
Never heard of leaky gut.
So it's basically when the gut villi, so the microvilli, have eroded to such a state that they're not releasing enzymes, you're not making digestive acid, so therefore you don't break down your food properly. Mm-hmm. And then partially digested food makes its way from in your stomach where it's supposed to be out into the bloodstream where it's not supposed to be. Mm-hmm. Your immune system, and once again 90% of it lives in the gut, particularly small intestine is where it predominantly is. Those white blood cells end up out in the bloodstream, and they try to destroy the food particles in the bloodstream. But part of the problem is the immune system then thinks they're bacteria or viruses or something that they need to kill. Right. So that's where the immune system starts getting into this waffly state of what's food, what's bugs, what's trying to kill me. And that's when autoimmunity can sort of kick in and start. Have you heard of autoimmune diseases? Yes, things like rheumatoid arthritis, really common, Graves' disease, Hashimoto's. They sort of suspect 50% of people in Australia have thyroid issues, even though many are within range medically, because it takes on average 10 years to have your thyroid bad enough so that we actually fit within the medical model of being bad enough to put on medication. Once again, medication isn't necessarily the answer either, because by the time you need medication, about 90% of your thyroid has deteriorated. So we're sort of talking we actually want to find things before it shows up in blood tests. By the time your liver is showing up in a blood test, your liver's really struggling. By the time your kidney, function is showing up, that's really bad. So what we want to do sort of from that natural perspective is get people when they've got the symptoms before it becomes the long-term problems. A lot of research the last few years in leaky gut has been about autism. So there's a particular diet that was developed by Natasha Campbell McBride, and she's a doctor who was looking at the psychology and so how the brain is affected by the gut. Have you heard that sort of connection? The gut-brain connection.
I've heard of people making the connection.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So basically within the 6 layers of the gut, there's an immune layer and there's a nervous system layer. They're right next to each other. So if your immune layer is affected, it can affect your nervous system layer. The nervous system layer has a direct link to the brain. So basically they're now looking at this GAPS diet as a way of supporting people with autism and ADHD and, you know, the ASD spectrum and all of that sort of thing. And people with anxiety and depression, you know, what's going on that, you know, we're suffering so much from these as a society these days. There's something really big going on in our health.
Well, you've got a recipe that you're going to give us a bit in a minute.
Certainly do.
To help with gut health. We're going to go to a few more tunes. We'll be right back after this. This is Midnight Oil and Beds Are Burning.